Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. 'Tis I, indeed, Jason up New Year's Revolution Cave. A few minutes before we do the Rushmore show, coming at ya. Renegade, or what? Rush Hour Renegades, coming at ya. What's that from? Speaking of television, what's that from? Rush Hour Renegades, coming at ya. Anyway, it's a show that I'm revisiting with Liam, and even he thinks it's tough to sit through, but whatever, you'll figure it out. Anyway, 30 most memorable television moments in my life is, again, we are only on day 3 of the 30-day grief process as we grieve the death of television. As you join me in my sorrow. And I'll tell you what, it's not sorrow, it's changing. And I feel like it's changing because if I wasted time watching current product, I wouldn't have the time to go back and watch previous product. So I'll take the death of television all day, honestly, because I get to watch better stuff. Anyway, we have a few minutes. We're going to talk about memorable moment number 3, and memorable moment number 3 is not a moment indeed. It's a collection of moments. It's a period of time that started probably in '85, I'd say. When again, cable was in our home as far back as I can remember. Seriously, I don't remember ever not having cable. Okay, so I don't remember having to turn the dial to 8, 10, or 13 or 31 to watch a show. I don't ever remember that. All of my memories include having cable. And this channel was a part of cable television's, big run. Their initial early '80s boom, as they began getting into households aplenty. This channel was a featured channel on all of our cable lineups, and it was a great channel. That's all I have to say about that. Thanks for tuning in. It was a great channel. It had so much, and it grew throughout the 80s and even into the 90s and 2000s. For, when you talk to 90s kids, they have memories of this channel too. Even the 2000s kids, I think, probably have memories of this channel. Definitely the 90s kids. Definitely the 90s kids talk about, Hey Dude and Rocco's Modern Life and Pete and Pete, or I don't know. It's stuff I've never seen. And then, but 80s kids, we got the first run. We got the first showing. We got the pilot, if you will, of the channel. The channel I'm talking about is Nickelodeon. And my childhood with Nickelodeon is memorable television moment number 3. In fact, it's so in my brain. Nickelodeon was channel 32 for as long as I can remember back. Nickelodeon was channel 32 and USA was channel 30 on our cable system. And I spent many evenings, many after schools and evenings on the floor, watching Nickelodeon. Earliest Nickelodeon show I remember is You Can't Do That on Television. And I don't know this for sure, but I think a lot of Nickelodeon shows were from Canada. I could be dead wrong about that. I know that You Can't Do That on Television was a Canadian show, and it was like a Saturday Night Live for kids. It was a sketch comedy show for kids. SCTV and Saturday Night Live for adults, and You Can't Do That on Television ripped off the concept and made one for kids. And I loved it. I absolutely loved You Can't Do That on television. I remember Moose. Moose was the host. We had Lisa Ruddy. We had Kevin Kubicheski. And we had Barth, the restaurant owner, the Gross restaurant. And we had, that might be it. That might be all I can remember. Yeah, that might be all I can remember. But for some of you, 90s music fans, Alanis Morissette was on You Can't Do That on television as a kid actress. Alistair something or other was on You Can't Do That on television. That was, I think, like the first run of actors, and then it changed, over the years. But like I said, sketch comedy show with, let's see what that text says. Let me know. Oh, link will be sent soon. Okay. Sketch comedy, but it was, so the ones I remember the most are, Barth's restaurant. He was like this gross restaurant owner cook, and he would serve like the grossest food, and the kids would always find like a hair or a rat or whatever in the food, and he'd like, he'd spit in the burgers, and he was all congested and snotty. He's hilarious. And then of course, the lockers, remember the lockers? They would all be in the locker, and they'd open a locker and be like, "Hey, Lisa," and Lisa would open up, yeah, Moose, and like Moose would tell a joke or whatever, and they'd go back in the locker, and two more kids would come out and talk. And then you had, I remember the mom and dad would like sit in their living room. There was like a living room set with the mom and the dad, and the dad was also Barth, but just, different. Les Lee or Les Lyle was his name. In real life, Les Lyle, I think, was the actor who played the dad and other characters on You Can't Do That on television. But as kids, the best part of the show was when you said the word water, water would get dumped on you from the ceiling. But more importantly, if you said the word I don't know, when you said I don't know, you would get slimed. And I think You Can't Do That on television started like the whole Nickelodeon slime thing. Well, obviously it did. And to this day, I think slime is still part of Nickelodeon's, shtick. I credit You Can't Do That on television for starting the whole slime thing. So that was fun. As kids, we would do the water game. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but we would do it in the bathtub. Why I would, my sisters were like 6 and 4 or 6 and 3. So I think me as an 8-year-old, I guess it was normal for me to be in the bathroom when my sisters were in the tub, and we would do a sketch, and they would say the word water, and I would dump water on their heads. We were kids. We can all be in the bathroom together, for God's sake. I wasn't 17. Great show. Mr. Wizard's World. Mr. Wizard. Don, I don't know how to say it, Don Herbert was Mr. Wizard. And he would have, it looked like he was broadcasting from his home, like his home studio or whatever. But he would have kids, middle school kids. And they would do these fun little like 3-minute science experiments. And he was he was genius and brilliant, and and I think that was a Canadian show too. I think Mr. Wizard was Canadian. I could be wrong. But fun show, science experiments, half-hour show, and silly stuff like rub a balloon and your hair sticks up and things like that. Simple basic stuff. I loved it. I would love to go back and watch a full season set or a DVD set of both of those shows. You Can't Do That on television and Mr. Wizard. Double Dare. Double Dare, it goes without saying. That's a little older, like 87 or so, but Double Dare was just, it was must-see TV for my sisters and I. In fact, they asked for letters you could write to Double Dare, so we wrote to Double Dare and just said that we really wanted to be on the show. That resulted in nothing, of course, but I remember writing a letter to Double Dare. Good old Mark Summers, the host. Where two teams of kids, teams of two would compete in, trivia, really, really easy trivia. And then if you didn't know the answer, you dare and you double dare. And if you can't get it after a double dare, you have to take the physical challenge, which was, throw an egg and catch it in your hat, catch 3 of them in 30 seconds and you win. Loved it. The obstacle course, of course, at the end was, just dreamy for a kid. I mean, it was just like ideal. It was such a fantasy game show to go on as a kid and do those obstacle courses. And I found myself like really legitimately cheering for the kids to win the grand prize, which was either a computer or a trip to space camp, which I thought would have been probably the worst thing in the world. I had zero interest in that as a kid, so I didn't want to win a trip to space camp at all. I thought that was awful. There was a very, I don't want to say unknown show, but it's certainly not talked about, a show called Out of Control, which again I think is Canadian because it was hosted by Dave Coulier, Joey from Full House. So before his big break on Full House, he hosted a show on Nickelodeon called Out of Control. And Out of Control, again, was a half-hour show, and it's hard to even describe. They would have, it wasn't sketches, but they would have like, I don't know, vignettes, like, I don't know. It's just like weird to describe what Out of Control was. You got to go back and watch it on YouTube. It was cool. They would have not skits, but they would have segments of different stuff. And I can't describe it to you. You got to go back and watch it. And that's when Dave Coulier first started his Cut It Out thing. Loved it. Couple of cartoons, Danger Mouse, Banana Man, and Inspector Gadget were Nickelodeon cartoons that we would watch. Nickelodeon had programming on in the morning that my sisters loved. In fact, the whole morning block was dedicated to Pinwheel and a show called Today's Special. And Today's Special was in a department store, and the employees were, they focused on like 2 employees, Jody and Jeff. And then they had Sam, the puppet, who was like the security guard, and then Muffy Mouse was a puppet. So the real live actors would interact with, the puppet characters would come alive during the day or whatever, only exposing themselves to Jody and Jeff, whatever. Pinwheel was odd. Pinwheel was just a lot of really short cartoons and just really preschool stuff, but my sisters loved it. And sick days from school, or just all of us home from school, Pinwheel and Today's Special would just air all day. And it's weird because when Liam was a baby, we had a channel called Baby First, and Baby First actually reminded me of Pinwheel. All the shows on Baby First were very similar to Pinwheel, just these short, silly, talking crayons or talking ducks. Ooh, hello duck, hello crayon, and there's your cartoon. And he wouldn't blink. He would just be gone and just stare at Baby First shows, which, reminded me of Pinwheel. But as I got a little older, Nickelodeon would do Nick at Night. So I think Nick at Night debuted around 86 or 87, and it was the first, it was kind of like the precursor to like the whole MeTV thing or Antenna TV, where they're just showing old shows. But we're talking about the early 80s, the mid 80s. What's old? Shows from the 60s, shows from the 50s, which I wasn't really into at all. But I remember putting on Nick at night when I was a kid, as I'd go off to sleep. I would watch, My Three Sons and Make Room for Daddy and Mr. Ed and whatever else, Nick at Night had, because it was comforting and it was relaxing. So I would drift off to sleep to Nick at Night. Today I have no idea what Nickelodeon has. I know back when we had some kind of provider, cable provider, we had Nick Jr. and there was, you know, some silly cartoons on there for the kids, but no idea about the teen programming on Nickelodeon. I assume it's like your, you know, remember the show Clarissa Explains It All? That was on Nickelodeon. That was kind of like a, you know, preteen, you know, 12, 13-year-old show where it's, you know, it's not a kiddie show, but it's not too heavy. Clarissa Explains It All was kind of like the last thing that I, you know, paid attention to on Nickelodeon. And then of course it ended, as everything does. But what a great run as a kid, finding this channel and being thoroughly entertained by Nickelodeon. I think it's I don't know what it's doing today, like I said, but I think it's a good thing. It's a positive channel, and it was very entertaining. You didn't get your Saturday morning cartoons or anything on Nickelodeon, but you had programming throughout the day to entertain you. So, memorable moment number 3 is my experience with the vast programming on a little channel called Nickelodeon, channel 32 in Rochester, New York. Nickelodeon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, tomorrow we'll be back with another. I don't know what yet. I've written some down. I've probably got about 8 or 10 written down. I've got to do some more. But we'll have another memorable moment of my 30 most memorable moments. We'll do number 4 tomorrow. I'm going to go hang out with these Rushmore show guys, and we will see you all next time. Thank you for joining. Good night now. Nick, Nickelodeon. Oh, this is still on.